What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with another box office breakdown video for this past weekend, which saw the debut of Dragon Ball Super Superhero here in the States and the domestic marketplace, and I believe maybe a couple of other markets as well. Coming in at the number 1 spot very easily over the number 2 newest film, and the number 2 film of the domestic box office, the film Beast, with that CGI lion, but hey, we'll go ahead and go into those numbers and talk about exactly what that means for the film going forward and how a much lower than what I had expected production budget, at least as of the recording of this video, was for this movie to put it in a position where it actually has a decent chance of being able to make its money back. So let's go ahead and dive into the stories. But I do want to say first and foremost that we got to give some props to Top Gun Maverick because it has now officially passed $1.4 billion. That's a billion with a B. At the worldwide box office. It has been able to surpass domestically, internationally, so many other films. It is just amazing that during the pandemic era, post-pandemic era, all the excuses, right, that have been made for months and months and months, this film is just leaving them all in the dust and showing, hey, if you make a good movie, if you make a film that is actually going to pay respect to the fandom that it is being made for, but also be able to actually have the mass appeal to be able to bring others who have no idea about anything when it comes to Top Gun, whether they've seen the original or not. If you make a fun movie, people are going to show up to go see it, to support it, and hey, kudos to Paramount and to Tom Cruise for being able to show that that is how it gets done, where we've had obviously several films from studios like Disney and Warner Brothers and others, which have shown, hey, guess what? If you isolate your audience, if you try to push political agendas into your films and isolate your audience, you're going to push a lot of people away. But I wanted to get that one out of the way too because Top Gun Maverick, $1.4 billion, huge news and just a huge message to modern day Hollywood about the kinds of films that we want to actually go see. Looking at the actual numbers themselves, Dragon Ball Superhero, again coming here, distributed by Crunchyroll, made $20 million in its opening weekend, making $20 million at opening around 3,000 screens. Normally the way that these films tend to work, or at least how it has in the past historically, is a lot of times I feel that the Dragon Ball Super, just like a lot of the other anime-type movies that usually come out in the States, I always feel that they have a much more limited release where they release it on certain days. I'm wondering if because those individual days have been very successful, that they've now started to, the process of actually getting them having actual releases where they're actually in over 3,000 theaters and therefore accessible to the mass population. Maybe that is the case. All I can say is that, hey, it's working out pretty well for them because the fact that this film's budget is always very small. The last film that they made in this franchise cost about $8 million. Right now, the projections that this film costs somewhere between that $8 and $10 million. So just from the domestic market alone, we're looking at a film making its money back, relatively easily, or at the very least getting close to that. But when you add in how much money it's already made from its home country of Japan, where it had obviously had an earlier release in the summer, we are starting to see this film already break even, already make some profits. So hey, kudos to Crunchyroll in this instance for being the distributor of this film and its box office profitability. Coming in the number 2 spot is the film Beast from Universal. Yes, if you've seen the commercial for it, it is the one starring Idris Elba and a terrible CGI lion. However, when you take into account the film cost around $30 million to produce, I'm willing to excuse some of that CGI. However, the reason why I'm not fully willing to excuse the bad CGI is because there was another film that came out a couple years ago, 2020. It was not able to come out in theaters because of all the pandemic stuff, called Love and Monsters. It had roughly around the same budget, had, I would say, a lot more CGI based on what we've seen in the trailer. It seems like it's just really this lion and maybe a couple other creatures, whereas Love and Monsters, you had actual originally designed creatures that all looked fantastic. It just goes to show you, right, there's not just the amount of money you have on a project and not just the kind of CGI or the kind of money you have for CGI. It's also how you use it, how you utilize it, how you design those characters that really makes a difference nonetheless. So I've not seen Beast myself. I really don't have that much desire to see it, but some people have said, hey, maybe you should give it a shot because Idris Elba is playing a good dad character in the film, and that is something very rare in modern day Hollywood. And so maybe it has that going for it, and maybe it's that story, maybe it's the family story that is bringing people out to go see this film, as it made a respectable $11.5 million. And I say respectable because just comparing that to the budget, it's not all that bad. It's not that great when you look at the rest of the films in the box office and where those films opened up. But again, for its budget, I would say that's pretty respectable. And I would say breaking even is actually within the realm of possibility for that movie. Coming in at the number 3 spot this week is Bullet Train, dropping out of the number 1 spot there, making another $8 million, a 40% drop from the previous week. As you can see, they are starting to pull this from theaters. About 500 screens they pulled so far in the third week of the release. And this is a movie where it's making enough money domestically, internationally for the chance of it to make its break-even point, to make a little bit of profit is still possible, but is definitely not a guarantee. It basically has to pull Elvis-type numbers, which right now it isn't really pulling as far as the day-to-day numbers and the week-to-week numbers. So I would say go see Bullet Train, go see Top Gun Maverick, because for me, those were the 2 best films of the summer, the best films of the year in theaters as far as just pure entertainment value being concerned. So again, Bullet Train, another $8 million there. Top Gun Maverick there, though still staying in the top 5. Even after being out for 13 weeks, again, 13 weeks this movie's been out, and it's still in the top 5. It's the top 4 spot, making another $5.8 million, only a 17% drop. It's still out at almost 3,000 screens 13 weeks in. This is when most films have either completely died or are on the process of leaving. This film's just like going full Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Top Gun Maverick, dude. Awesome stuff. $1.4 million worldwide for that movie. DC League of Super Pets from Warner Brothers is having some pretty strong holds from week to week, so this might actually be a sign that there are enough families that are going to see this film each week, even after being out for 4 weeks, that it might be able to squeeze out a little bit more money. Right now, I still have the film projected to lose money, but that is not all that surprising for Warner Brothers. But nonetheless, that 18% is still very, very strong, and the fact that it's still in the multiple millions for a weekend, again, we'll see what happens with DC League of Super Pets. Thor: Love and Thunder dropped down to the number 6 spot, making another $4 million, 25% drop. Again, not terrible there. Starting to lose some theaters, though, being out for 7 weeks of release. This is also one of the few times in which this film has actually beat out Minions. Minions, of course, now being available in less theaters, but we have to keep in mind that Minions' worldwide total has now just become massive, and that is, of course, thanks to the communists in China. So, hey, I'm going to say shame to you, and I'm going to call out Minions here because they, of course, are doing work with the Chinese Communist Party in China. And because of the millions of dollars and one of the best openings, according to the article here from Deadline, Minions Rise of Gru China debut is Hollywood's biggest animation opening day of the pandemic. Ah, yes, you always love the records they just make up saying, well, it's of the pandemic era, the best opening. But still, that means millions of dollars are going to the CCP. So, yeah. Screw you. Nonetheless, the film's still making tons of money. So even though it finally fell behind Thor in this number, there's no way Thor: Love and Thunder is ever going to be able to catch it. And that's not just because of the China numbers. This film was well ahead of it, even before China came into the discussion. Coming in and rounding off the top 10 are The Where the Crawdads Sing, another $3.1 million, and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies from A24, which added another 1,251 screens. Again, one of these weird A24 release cycles, but I don't really care all that much about Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. It's a Pete Davidson film, and it just doesn't look all that interesting to begin with. Looking at the films worldwide, as you can see, this is for Dragon Ball Super. Don't let the title up there confuse you. I don't know why it's not it's in multiple languages, of course, but I don't know why it's not in English as one of those languages from the numbers. I don't quite understand that. But as you can see, $20.1 million domestic opening weekend puts this film at $32 million worldwide. If we look at the international numbers here, let me see if we can pull that up. Right now, we're not getting any type of charting, but obviously the biggest piece of that pie is going to be from Japan. Remember that the numbers, they don't always have the most up-to-date when it comes to these numbers at this point. So as you can see, $12 million is being reported, but their charting is not saying 12 million. And that's again because of the fact that they really don't update their charts nearly as well as they should. But hey, $32 million, already enough to put this film into the black. And a big part of that is its low production budget. And again, which I'm thinking is around, I've not been able to verify this yet, but somewhere between 8 and 10 million would be my guess. And then you got Beast, which had a production budget of around $30 million, making 21.8. So not a terrible opening for this movie. But again, fight for family. Maybe that's the message that is bringing people out to go see it, because it's definitely not going to be the CGI effects. This is a movie, again, that cost $36 million. And so right now it's made 0.6 times its production budget. We'll see how it does in its week 2 drop off. And if it is strong enough, it potentially has that chance to make its money back. Bullet Train is still very much up in the air. As you can see, as far as its domestic performance goes, it is not underperforming by any means. It's still very much within the range of what they were expecting it to be. Right now, it's going to be really how much energy, how much gas does it have in the tank to push it domestically, internationally. And as I said, I would recommend going to see this film. Here's the Top Gun Maverick, $1.4 million. Again, just insane numbers here. And for all the films that are now falling to this movie, I believe it even beat what was it, the domestic number for one of the big Avengers films even more recently. Hey, yeah, kudos to you for being able to pull that off. DC League of Super Pets up to $130 million worldwide. Thor Love and Thunder at $737 million here. And as you can see, still well below its projections domestically. Internationally, it's still doing about what many had projected it to be. And it's making some money, but it ain't making Marvel money. And it's going to be a film that's maybe going to cap out maybe at most $100 million in actual net gain profits. But either way, it's not looking all that great for this film. It's really raising the question of where do those other films down the line fall? I think Wakanda Forever might be the exception because I do think that film is going to do much better domestically than what many people might suspect it to do because of the Chadwick Boseman factor. Because if you look back to the first one, it made over $700 million domestically, which was insane even then. And I don't think that I don't think we can discount that film doing as well as it possibly could. The film, Nope, finally starting to get some international numbers here, and so it's up to 133, still in the red. But as I said, once these international numbers start coming in, I do believe that it has still a chance to make its money back. Elvis continuing to hang around as well, doing very well again, having the type of holds that Bullet Train would need to have to be able to break even, but this film is doing it. Fall in its second week of release is, again, it seems to be getting some people, not many, but some people going out to the theaters, but because of the film's very low budget, it could still end up making its money back in the long run anyway. And some updates on some of the bigger films. Jurassic World Dominion, $985.5 million. So again, slowing down enough to where $1 billion maybe isn't really on the cards. Of course, Universal might try to do some type of push at the very end to try and maybe offer posters or whatever to get people out just to get to that $1 billion mark. But as I said, it doesn't really seem like it has that type of energy. And as I mentioned, Minions up to $833 million. And a big part of that is because of its now opening in China, and this number will of course update once we actually have that. As you can see, $11.7 million is what's being reported here on the numbers. So again, that means millions of dollars going to the communist over in China. Looking at the charting, we can only do some box office charting as far as projections are concerned for the film Fall, because we're in our second week of release. Making 5.3 in its second week means I'm projecting the film to make somewhere between $7 and $10 million by the end of its run, which means that based on those projections, the film will likely make its money back. And if it is going on the current trend and continues to track the way it is, it might not be that much. It might only make a couple million in profit, or it could end up having some pretty strong holds and make upwards of maybe 10 million for all we know. Either way, it's actually looking pretty good for that film. Again, low budget is helping that film tremendously. The film Beast, $21.8 million. Right now, it's only $40 million in the red. That's why I said it could, over the long run, if the film has some good word of mouth, has some good legs. So we'll see that second weekend numbers to see if that actually holds. Could actually end up getting to its break-even point. Bullet Train is still $45 million in the red. So it's definitely moving in the right direction, but does it have enough steam? I'm not seeing it at this point in time, but never say never at this point. Then you have other films like Easter Sunday, which is just a flop. Coming out at the wrong time of the year. League of Super Pets still $56 million in the red, and so even though it's having small drops domestically, it just does not seem to have enough to be able to pull off, just because of the massive budget that this had. Really paid more for this film than they probably should have. Nope is right now 22 in the million in the red, but as I mentioned previously, I do think that this number is going to get a lot lower as these international numbers start to update. And of course, the last film I do want to talk about is the massive behemoth that is Top Gun Maverick. $1.4 billion, meaning this film has a chance maybe to get closer, even closer, to $600 million in net gain profits. If you look at this percentage right here, this film has more than doubled what it made in its first 2 weeks of release. That is what this number is comparing it to, its first 2 weeks of release. And so, for instance, right here for Jurassic World Dominion, right now where the current money stands versus its first 2 weeks, first 2 weeks account for 63% of the entirety of the movie. So the vast majority of the amount that it has made so far was made in those first 2 weeks, and it's fallen off since then. Whereas with Top Gun Maverick, it not only made a lot early on, but it has continued to make more and more and more. And it's a great movie to boot. So what are y'all's thoughts about this? Do you think Top Gun Maverick will get even higher. Let me know what your thoughts on that. Have you seen Dragon Ball Super? Again, I'm someone who's not all that much into Dragon Ball Super. I liked Dragon Ball Z when I was growing up, but I've kind of fallen away from the Super. But let me know your thoughts about that. The new films, Beast as well, and whether you think Bullet Train has a chance of breaking even. Let me know your thoughts about that and anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, have the fire button on Odyssey. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.